I don't have a car lift, so every time I have to go under the car, it's either on my back or using a creeper. We got a bunch of different creepers to test today, so let's see which brand is the best. In the first test, we'll see which mechanic's creeper rolls the easiest. Then we'll compare comfort and ergonomics. We'll also see how they perform rolling on all-terrain surfaces. We'll be testing two different types of creepers. The first type includes an all-plastic frame. At a price of only $34, the least expensive brand we'll be testing is made by ProLift. It has 6 multi-terrain swivel casters. They claim that their 2-inch caster wheels allow for maneuverability, but also extra clearance while working underneath the car. It claims to have a 300-pound capacity. We're going to test that. The ProLift is a blow-molded creeper that's made out of HDPE plastic. Installing the 6 caster wheels takes less than 10 minutes, and the fasteners include nylon nuts to prevent the fasteners from loosening over time. And the ProLift is made in China. Fully assembled, the ProLift is very light at only 8 pounds. And the ProLift is very narrow at 16¼ inches. Creeper clearance makes a huge difference, and the ProLift is very low to the ground at 3¾ inches at the highest part of the creeper. People come in all different sizes and shapes. So I'll go ahead and place an 8-inch cinder block on top of the ProLift to represent a person shaped like a cinder block. And it's 10.75 inches at the top of the 8-inch block. A wise person once told me that a car is only as good as its tires, and a creeper is the same way. So let's test the rolling resistance using this manufactured log that weighs 170 pounds. I'll add an additional 90 pounds of weight for a total of 260 pounds. The wheels are already positioned to roll towards me, and it takes right at 13.9 pounds of peak force to roll 260 pounds, which is actually pretty good. The wheels are now facing the opposite direction, and the casters rotated easily, and it took a peak force of 19.3 pounds. Rolling to the side on a creeper can sometimes be a challenge, and the ProLift is moving at 17.9 pounds. From my experience, creepers seem to get hung up on small rocks and other foreign objects. I've attached a wire to a board to keep the wire stretched while the creepers roll over the wire. And the small hard wheels on the ProLift really struggle to go over the wire at 53.9 pounds of force. At a price of $38, the second least expensive brand we'll be testing is made by DNA Motoring. It claims to be 40 inches long and 19 inches wide. Max load is 300 pounds. Instead of 2-inch diameter wheels, the DNA Motoring has 3-inch diameter wheels. Just like the ProLift, the wheels have to be attached to the creeper with 12 bolts for 6 wheels. The side pockets are about 2.5 inches by 10 inches in length. The DNA Motoring is made in China, and it's 11.15 pounds for the DNA Motoring. And the DNA Motoring is wider than the ProLift at 18.5 inches. It's also 3¾ inches longer at 39.75. And the DNA Motoring with the 3-inch wheels is about an inch higher off the ground. However, the top of the block is almost the same height as the ProLift at 10 5/8 inches. And the DNA Motoring took 21.3 pounds of force, or about 8 pounds more than the ProLift. Forcing the DNA Motoring casters to change directions took a lot more force at 30.5 pounds, or 11 pounds more than the ProLift. The DNA Motoring has poor genetics for rolling to the side at 42.7 pounds. That number seemed way too high, but it was about a pound more on the second attempt. Larger wheels really helped the DNA Motoring roll over the wire at 48 pounds, or about 6 pounds less than the ProLift. At a price of $40 is this Pittsburgh brand, which is sold at Harbor Freight. It has a 300-pound capacity. It claims to be an oversized, low-profile automotive creeper. And the Pittsburgh creeper looks almost the same as a DNA Motoring, but the wheels and the bolts used to fasten the wheels are definitely different. If you buy the Pittsburgh creeper, it's probably a good idea to use some thread lock to prevent the nuts from loosening over time. And the tool storage pockets are the same size as the DNA Motoring creeper. The Pittsburgh is made in China, and the Pittsburgh is almost a pound lighter than the DNA Motoring at 10.25 pounds. And the Pittsburgh might look exactly like the DNA, but the Pittsburgh has a thicker headrest and is about 1/4 inch lower to the ground. And the Pittsburgh is about the same as the DNA Motoring at 18.5 inches. And it's 10.5 inches from the top of the block, which is the best clearance yet. And the Pittsburgh performed very well at only 8.9 pounds to move into the lead over the ProLift. And the Pittsburgh also made the easiest work of changing directions at 18.3 pounds. And the Pittsburgh moves into second place with a sideways roll of only 20.4 pounds. And the Pittsburgh moves into first place once again, rolling over the wire at only 44.9 pounds. At a price of $49 is this Big Red brand. And the Big Red creeper looks exactly the same as the much more affordable DNA Motoring creeper. It also has a weight capacity of only 280 pounds compared to 300 for the DNA Motoring and Pittsburgh creepers. However, the wheels on the Big Red seem to be of higher quality compared to the Pittsburgh and the DNA Motoring. It also comes with plastic covers for the fastener cutouts. The Big Red is made in China. And the Big Red weighs 10.37 pounds. And the Pittsburgh and Big Red not only weigh about the same, but they also look the same. The wheels on the Pittsburgh and Big Red are definitely different. And the Big Red is the same as the Pittsburgh at 4.5 inches and 10.5 at the top of the block. And the Big Red began rolling at 13.3 pounds, which is good enough to move into second place behind the Pittsburgh. And the Big Red's caster wheels rotate very easily at 15.4 pounds to move into the lead. And the Big Red ties the Pro Lift for first place on the sideways roll at only 17.9 pounds. And the Big Red just rolled over the wire at 37.9 pounds, the best yet. At a price of $50, is this JEGS brand. The JEGS has a 250-pound capacity. The JEGS has two magnetic trays that lay inside the pockets, but they don't actually stay attached to the creeper. Some double-sided tape might be the way to go. The wheels on the JEGS are also slightly different than the wheels on the other brands. The JEGS is made in China, and the JEGS weighs 10.66 pounds. I used a durometer to measure the hardness of the wheels, and most of the wheels were too hard for the durometer. However, the wheels on the JEGS are by far the softest at around 14.5. And the JEGS might look exactly the same as the previous three brands, but it offers a larger cutout for the shoulders and arms, which really helps. The wheels on the JEGS are also larger, and the JEGS is at 4.75 inches at the top of the creeper and a little below 10.5 inches at the top of the block. And the JEGS took the most force to move yet at 22.3 pounds. The soft rubber wheels did not want the casters to rotate at 39.8 pounds, the most yet once again. And the sideways roll was a big struggle for the JEGS at 50.4 pounds, the most yet for 3 in a row. However, the soft wheels made very easy work of rolling over the wire at 38.6 pounds to move into second place on this test. Let's move on and compare the creepers with metal frames. At a price of $46, is this Vevor brand. It's a 36-inch Z Creeper Seat 2-in-1 garage shop creeper. It has a 300-pound capacity. 4 bolts hold the frame together, and the wheels also need to be installed. Compared to the previous brands, there's quite a bit more assembly required with the Vevor. The creeper is supported by 6 2.5-inch wheels. From my experience, this style of wheel kit loosens up over time and will definitely be unreliable as the threads experience a lot of wear and tear. So some high-strength thread locks should really help. The Vevor is made in China, and the Vevor weighs 12.9 pounds. And the Vevor is pretty narrow at only 17 inches and is pretty short at 36. And 3 3/4 inches of frame clearance, but the cushions are very stiff. 12 inches is the worst clearance yet, and the Vevor's wheels are small and very hard, which really helped it at only 10.9 pounds. The casters also changed direction very easily at only 17 pounds. The sideways roll for the Vevor was also better than average at 25 pounds. The small hard wheels really hurt the Vevor's performance at rolling over the wire at 55.5 pounds, the most force yet. At a price of $49, is this Big Red brand. It has a 250-pound capacity. It's a creeper that also doubles as a seat. And the frame on the Big Red comes pre-assembled, but the wheels still need to be installed. Some high-strength thread lock should really help these wheels stay properly fastened. I won't use thread lock in this review since this isn't a step that's called for in the assembly instructions. And the wheel design looks very similar to the Vevor's. The Big Red is made in China, and the Big Red weighs 17.77 pounds. And the Big Red is the shortest yet at 36 inches, and it's around 17 inches wide. 3 3/4 inches of frame clearance and 12 inches with the block is the same as the Vevor. In the folded position, the Big Red offers a much wider seat. And the wheels in the Big Red are also small and hard, which really helped it perform well at only 12 pounds. The casters also made very easy work of changing directions at only 18.8 pounds. The sideways roll is good enough to move into third place at only 18.5 pounds. And the small dense wheels did struggle to roll over the wire at 49.6 pounds. At a price of $50, is this JEGS brand. Low profile creeper with adjustable positions and a 300-pound capacity. And the JEGS needs to be assembled just like the Vevor. 4 bolts hold the frame together, and the wheels also need to be installed. The creeper looks a lot like the Vevor, but the frame is definitely different. The fasteners holding the frame together are also a little bit different. And the JEGS might look a lot like the Vevor, but the JEG is about a half a pound heavier at 13.39 pounds. The JEGS is 36 inches in length and 17 inches in width. And the JEGS looks about the same as the Vevor, but the frame is a little closer to the ground at 3.5 inches. It also offers a little better clearance at 11.5 inches. The wheels on the JEGS are also a lot smaller. Compared to the Vevor, the wheels on the JEGS are much smaller, but it didn't seem to make much of a difference on the first test at 11.8 pounds. And the JEGS performed fairly well at changing directions at 19.9 pounds. And 20.5 pounds for the sideways roll is good enough to move into 4th place behind the Big Red. And the JEGS had some really small wheels, and that really hurt it at rolling over the wire at 70.9 pounds. At a price of $60, is this KTool brand. The nice thing about the KTool is it comes pre-assembled. There's a lever next to the headrest that allows the headrest to be adjusted to 3 different heights. The head support should provide a lot of relief to those neck muscles when trying to reach those oil pan or bell housing bolts. While the KTool came pre-assembled, the headrest is very loose. The KTool is made in China, and the KTool weighs 13.2 pounds. At 40 inches in length, the KTool is well designed for tall people. It's also pretty wide at almost 17.5 inches. And the KTool's frame is just under 4 inches, and it offers pretty good clearance at 11 inches. In the highest position, the head cushion is at 10.5 inches. And the KTool performed about average for rolling resistance at 13.9 pounds. However, the KTool performed quite a bit better than average at changing directions at only 15.8 pounds. It also performed very well on the sideways roll at only 18.9 pounds. The tiny wheels made it very challenging for the KTool to roll over the wire at 63.1 pounds. Also, the price is $60. The same price as the KTool is this Performance Tool brand. And the Performance Tool comes fully assembled. And the Performance Tool might look exactly like the KTool, but appears to be a much lighter duty version of the same creeper. 2.5-inch casters for easy 360-degree movement. It has a lever action headrest that adjusts to 3 different positions. The Performance Tool is made in China. And the Performance Tool is almost 2 pounds lighter than the KTool at 11.31 pounds. And the Performance Tool is also at 40 inches in length and it's 17.25 inches wide. It's also a little lower at 3 3/4 inches. And the Performance Tool is lower than the KTool at 10.25 inches. The cushion height is almost the same as the KTool's at 10.25 inches. And the Performance Tool looks about the same as the KTool, and it's about 3 pounds worse at 16.9 pounds on the first test. And the Performance Tool once again trails the KTool on the second test at 17.9 pounds. Unfortunately, not all the wheels are making contact with the ground, and the Performance Tool is trailing the KTool on the sideways pull at 19.6 pounds. And the Performance Tool really struggled with performance, rolling over the wire at 68.9 pounds. At a price of $85 is this Daytona brand, which is sold at Harbor Freight. Fortunately, the Daytona comes pre-assembled and ready to go to work. Compared to all the other brands so far, the Daytona offers the most weight capacity at 350 pounds. And the KTool and Performance Tool require the use of a lever to adjust the headrest height. Lifting the headrest on the Daytona and the headrest locks into position. They claim their vinyl cover is textured to prevent slipping and it wipes clean easily. Made in China. And it's 17.5 pounds for the Daytona. And the Daytona is a little bit wider than most of the other metal frame creepers at 17.5 inches. It's about the same length at around 39.5 inches. The frame area that gives room for the arms to extend is only about 1.5 inches off the ground. Frame clearance is good at 3 3/4 inches. Overall clearance is just over 11 inches, which is pretty good. And the top of the headrest is at 10.5 inches, the same as the KTool. And the Daytona takes about twice the force to get rolling compared to the Pittsburgh at 18.9 pounds. It also trailed the Pittsburgh for changing caster wheel directions at 23.4 pounds. And it takes 23.8 pounds for the sideways roll, which is more force than the Pittsburgh. And the Daytona's small wheels really struggle to roll over the wire at 68 pounds. At a price of $107 is this Traxion brand. It has all-terrain 5-inch caster wheels. The rubber wheels are made of hard TPR synthetic rubber for the best-in-class mobility. Of all the creepers, this one definitely takes the most time and effort to assemble. The legs do not slide into place without a little assistance from a mallet. Once the legs are installed, 2 bolts secure the backboard to the frame. Instead of using 6 wheels, the Traxion has 4 wheels. Only 3 of the 4 wheels are touching the ground at once as the frame is a little bit uneven. The Traxion is made in China. And the Traxion weighs just over 18 pounds. And the Traxion board is a little bit short at 37 inches. At 27 inches of width, the wheels are probably going to come into contact with jack stands and car ramps when working in tight spaces. The top of the frame that holds the wheels is pretty tall at 7 inches. The Traxion doesn't offer nearly as much clearance as some of the other brands at close to 12 inches. And the Traxion has by far the largest wheels in the lineup, and it performed a little bit better than average on the first test at 12.1 pounds. However, the Traxion really struggled to change directions at 27 pounds. And the Traxion performed about average on the sideways roll at 19.6. And the larger wheels really helped the Traxion roll over the wire at only 45.6 pounds. At a price of $140 is this Omega brand. It's a 2-in-1 creeper designed to be folded into a Z-shaped seat. It has the most capacity yet at 450 pounds. It also comes with 3-inch casters. And the Omega does come mostly assembled, but the 6 caster wheels need to be installed. This is definitely a much heavier duty creeper compared to the other brands. The Omega is made in China, and the Omega is by far the heaviest at 25.59 pounds. The name Omega seems to fit as the board is about 39 inches in length. It needs a very wide path at 26.25 inches. The tallest part of the creeper is around 4 inches off the ground, and it offers pretty good clearance at 11 inches. And the wheels on the Omega are definitely heavy duty, and it took 14.2 pounds to get the Omega rolling. And the Omega made pretty easy work of changing directions at 18.4 pounds. And the Omega rolled sideways at 20.8 pounds, which is a little bit better than average. And the Omega has really hard plastic wheels, and they still perform fairly well at rolling over the wire at 51.9 pounds. At a price of $333, the most expensive creeper we'll be testing is made by Snap-on. Snap-on does sell a very similar creeper with an adjustable headrest for $358, but it was on back order when I bought all the creepers. Fully padded with high-density 80-pound foam. Caster profile reduces rolling resistance and delivers increased maneuverability. Snap-on claims that flat oval tubing eliminates sharp corners and provides increased comfort. And the Snap-on is made in USA. And the Snap-on weighs 15.73 pounds. The frame width on the Snap-on is almost the same as the Daytona at 17 3/4 inches. The backboard length is also about the same at 39.5 inches. And the frame area that's designed for arm and shoulder mobility is about 1.25 inches off the ground. About 3 3/4 inches of frame clearance, and the top of the block is at 10.75 inches, or about a ½ inch better than the Daytona. And the Daytona and Snap-on almost look the same, but the Snap-on takes 6 pounds less force to get rolling at 12.1 pounds. And the Snap-on also beat the Daytona on changing directions at 15.8 pounds. And the Snap-on did the best in the entire lineup at rolling sideways at only 10.9 pounds. The Snap-on's wheels are small and very dense, and it took quite a bit of force to roll over the wire at 58.8 pounds. I'll go ahead and add up the numbers for the straight-on roll, changing directions, the sideways roll, and then rolling over the wire. And the big red plastic creeper came in on top at 84.5 pounds. And the Pittsburgh creeper finished in second at 92.5 pounds. For the creepers with a steel frame, the Snap-on finished in third place overall at 97.6 and Big Red 98.9. For those who keep their shop super clean, let's go ahead and factor out rolling over the wire. And the Snap-on has the best wheel kit of all the creepers with a cumulative score of only 38.8 pounds. The plastic Big Red and Pittsburgh creepers finished in second and third at 46.6 and 47.6 respectively. So the creeper that offers the lowest clearance is the Performance Tool at 10.25 inches. The JEGS plastic creeper was almost the same at 10.3. The plastic Pittsburgh and Big Red are at 10.5. If you're 6 feet tall or taller, the Pro Lift creeper is probably too short at 36 inches in length. Once I positioned myself on the creeper, my head was extended beyond the end of the creeper and I had to reposition myself. When I went to get up, the creeper went up on 2 wheels since the wheels are positioned too far inward. The concave area in the center of the creeper is only 10 inches wide. Definitely way too small for most of the mechanics that I know. And the DNA motoring is much better designed for tall people with a board length of around 39.5 inches. It is possible to position yourself properly without having to adjust your position once you're flat on the board. And the creeper remained on all the wheels when I stood up. The concave area is also about 3 inches wider than the Pro Lift. The Pittsburgh, Big Red, and JEGS are pretty close to the same length. All 3 boards are very similar for getting positioned to go to work or when standing up. Unfortunately, this style of board just isn't too comfortable with the hard plastic board. If you're tall, you'll probably find that the Vevor will be too short. I had to reposition once on the creeper and the board lifted off the ground when standing up. The Big Red is also pretty short and I had to reposition myself once I was on the creeper. However, the Big Red has done a much better job with the wheel placement, making this a much more stable creeper when standing up. Just like the Vevor, the JEGS is a pretty short creeper. I had to reposition myself once I was on the board. The front of the board began to lift when I stood up. For the most part, the KTool seems well designed for tall people. I'm able to land in the proper position on the first attempt. However, the frame bar is very uncomfortable and it's in the way when reaching for things out to the side or on the ground. I'm nowhere near 300 pounds, but the Performance Tool sounded like the backboard experienced damage from my body weight. The Performance Tool is a good size for a tall person, but the frame rail sticks up even more than the K-Tool and is very uncomfortable on the arms and shoulders. And the Daytona's cushion is much more comfortable than a Motel 6 mattress. And the frame area for the arms is also very well designed. When considering comfort and ergonomics, this is by far the best designed creeper so far. And the traction board is a little on the short side for a tall person. However, the wheel positioning makes this a very stable board. And the Omega has plenty of length for a tall person. However, the wheel mounts and the nut holding the wheel to the creeper gets in the way when reaching out to the side. Just like the Daytona, the Snap-on is very comfortable and well designed for lateral arm movement. Unfortunately, it does not have an adjustable headrest like the Daytona. Rating comfort is highly subjective, but I found the Daytona to be the best with the best possible rating of 1. Snap-on was in a close second at 1.5 and Traxion finished in third with a rating of 2. Creepers are used on many types of textures and surfaces, so I'll use a very hard rubber mat to simulate a much more challenging surface than smooth concrete. And the small wheels on the Pro Lift really struggle with rolling resistance at 30.4 pounds or more than twice as much compared to the concrete. The Pro Lift also struggled to change directions at 49.2 pounds. And the sideways roll was the most challenging maneuver of the three for the Pro Lift at 57.6 pounds. And the large wheels on the DNA motoring really helped with rolling resistance at 25.9 pounds. However, it really struggled to change directions at 58.7 pounds. Who needs a gym membership with reviews like this one? 72.2 pounds to roll sideways would be very challenging while laying on the creeper. And the very affordable Pittsburgh once again performed very well at 23.8 pounds of rolling resistance. It also performed very well at changing directions at only 29.7. And the sideways roll is by far the best yet at only 40.9 pounds. And the Big Red did the best yet at 21.2 pounds of rolling resistance. However, the Big Red trails the Pittsburgh at 37.8 pounds at changing directions. The Big Red also trailed the Pittsburgh on the sideways roll test at 47.8 pounds compared to 40.9 for the Pittsburgh. And the JEGS performed about average at 23.4 pounds of rolling resistance. However, the JEGS really trailed the Pittsburgh and the Big Red at changing directions at 53 pounds. And the JEGS also struggled quite a bit on the sideways roll at 68.3 pounds. And the Vevor has pretty small wheels, and it took quite a bit of force to get the Vevor moving at 28 pounds. And the Vevor really struggled to change directions as the front caster wheels really began to bend. And the Vevor caster wheel is properly installed, but just doesn't allow the wheel assembly to bolt tightly to the frame. Definitely a design issue. If I keep this up, I'll be in great shape to pull those spring calves at 69.3 pounds. And the Big Red performed better than the Vevor at 22.8 pounds of rolling resistance. And the Big Red's front wheels are much better designed, and the Big Red changed directions at 35 pounds. And the sideways roll also went very well for the Big Red at only 46 pounds. And the front wheels on the JEGS has the same design flaw as the Vevor and has 26.8 pounds of rolling resistance. And the JEGS also struggled to change directions at almost 50 pounds of force. And the front wheels just won't survive long with repeated bending like this. And the sideways roll was quite a struggle for the JEGS at just over 59 pounds. And the KTool has some pretty small wheels and has 25.8 pounds of rolling resistance. However, the KTool performed better than average at changing directions at 36.9 pounds. And the sideways roll was just about average at 53.2. And the Performance Tool performed about the same as the KTool at 26.9 pounds of rolling resistance. And it took a little more force to change directions with the Performance Tool at 38.8 pounds. And it took 50.8 pounds of force to get the Performance Tool creeper to move sideways. And the Daytona trailed the Pittsburgh in the first round on concrete, and it trailed the Pittsburgh again this time at 27.3 pounds. And the Daytona also trailed the Pittsburgh once again at 42.6 pounds on changing directions. And 44.8 pounds on the sideways pull isn't too bad, but not quite as well as the Pittsburgh. And the Traxion's big wheels are finally coming in handy at 17.7 pounds, which is by far the best yet. However, changing directions was a little bit of a struggle at 45.8 pounds. And 50.9 pounds on the sideways roll is about 10 pounds more than the Pittsburgh. And the Omega wheels are a lot wider than average, and they perform very well at only 17.7 pounds of rolling resistance, the same as the Traxion. And the Omega also made very easy work of changing directions at only 22.9 pounds, the best yet. And the Omega is very well designed for sideways rolling at 42.2 pounds. So very good all-around performance. And the Snap-on performed better than average at 23.9 pounds of rolling resistance. And the Snap-on also performed better than average at 32.6 pounds to change directions. For a mechanics creeper with small wheels, the Snap-on once again performed very well at 42.5. So adding up the totals for the three tests, the Omega came out on top with a total weight of 82.8 pounds. The Pittsburgh also performed very well at 94.4, and the Snap-on finished in third at 99. In the final test, I placed a 4x4 on top of each creeper, and then I lowered 260 pounds onto the end of each board, similar to a person sitting down on a creeper. And the Performance Tool definitely experienced some damage, but it did survive. While some of the creepers squatted more than others, all the creepers did survive the test. Assessing durability in build construction is highly subjective. I compared the quality of the backboards, casters, and wheels, and overall build construction. And 5 of the brands did receive the best possible rating of 1. So which mechanics creeper is the best? The first 5 creepers are the all-plastic creepers organized by price. And the bottom 9 creepers have a steel frame construction, and they're also organized by price. I've converted performance into an A through F grading scale to help make the results more meaningful. If you're looking for an all-plastic plastic creeper, the Pittsburgh, which is sold at Harbor Freight, is a great value at only $40. It performed well in just about every category. The plastic Big Red creeper also performed very well, but it's a little bit more expensive. If you're looking for a creeper that also folds into a seat, the Big Red earned A's in just about every category. It's a well-designed creeper considering the value price of just $49. The comfort and durability of the Daytona is great in my opinion. However, the caster wheels aren't nearly as good as some of the other brands. If only the Daytona was sold with the snap-ons wheels. The Omega performed well in many categories, but it does take up a lot of space and the wheels will probably get in the way at times. And the snap-on creeper does seem like the best all-around performer, however, it is very expensive at over $300. Manufacturers reach out to me all the time wanting reviews, but fortunately, I can just buy everything myself and everyone gets to see the results. All the videos in this channel are viewer suggested, so if you have a video idea, I hope you'll take time to leave a comment. Thanks so much for watching, please take care, and I look forward to next time.